We're hearing from the convicted sex trafficker and accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein in a newly released interview with the Department of Justice.
Could a Hollywood star step into the royal family by pure fate, or is there a sophisticated network of connections orchestrated behind the scenes? Welcome back. Today, we're putting Meghan Markle under the microscope of unsolved theories. I'll be connecting the dots from various sources, but keep in mind this content is strictly for reference based on theories and unverified speculation. We are exploring this through an objective analytical lens. Don't just watch, join the conversation. Drop a 1 in the comments if you're curious, or a 0 if you're skeptical. Hit like and subscribe right now to join me as we uncover the truth hidden behind the veil. Let's dive in. It all began not with what the public could see, but with what had been hidden for years. Like a storm that simmers silently invisible, yet causing unexpected changes, Ghislaine Maxwell testimony lifted the veil on a previously unknown secret. The person we least expected was Meghan Markle. Not an outsider, not a stranger, but a part of the story, a part of a profound encounter within a world of power that no one dared to touch. Many believe that Meghan Markle's story didn't simply begin with her fateful meeting with Prince Harry in 2016. Theories have surfaced about a past that goes back much further, where connections remain hidden within sealed records. Could there have been encounters within the circles of the world's most powerful elite before she ever became a duchess? Certain unofficial sources have mentioned Meghan's name in debates surrounding globally influential figures. But where does the truth actually lie, or are these merely coincidences woven into a larger narrative cue? Before stepping into Buckingham Palace, Meghan was already a fixture in the entertainment world. However, theorists and analysts pose a compelling question. Was her network of connections far more extensive than what we saw on screen? Speculation suggests she may have moved within elite social circles frequented by figures such as Prince Andrew or other even more controversial individuals. If these relationships truly existed, what role did they play in her journey toward the royal family? Or is it all just baseless conjecture built from fragmented pieces of a puzzle? This is not simply a quest for truth. It's a journey into the heart of secrets the world has deliberately tried to erase. If this story is true, things will never be the same. It means Meghan Markle didn't just stumble into the royal world by chance. She didn't just enter Buckingham Palace from the outside, but through unexpected connections through the hidden corners that the monarchy has tried to conceal for years. To understand Meghan's journey, we must begin with lesser-known events, quiet relationships, secret meetings, and corridors where fame was less important than connections. According to several reliable sources, Meghan was no stranger to the elite surrounding Prince Andrew. Not a friend or royal guest, but a frequent presence at exclusive gatherings. In the early 2000s and 2010s, Prince Andrew frequently attended social events with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, participating in charity parties and private galas not accessible to everyone. And in those private settings, Meghan was reportedly seen not yet a duchess, not yet a household name, but an aspiring actress seeking opportunities in a world where connections mattered more than a resume. The key here isn't the romantic relationship between Meghan and Andrew, but rather the level of closeness that allowed her to witness the hidden worlds behind the spotlight, the unspoken rules of high society. Sources indicate Meghan was introduced to individuals who could easily move between Hollywood, New York, and the royal family. More importantly, she was in contact with people closely connected to Andrew and Maxwell. These weren't sensational news stories, not front-page narratives, but rather a quiet presence behind-the-scenes details that would later become crucial pieces of the puzzle when Virginia Roberts asked Meghan to testify in the Epstein case. If Andrew paved the way into these circles of power, there was another figure who played an even more significant role in this story, Sarah Ferguson, Prince Andrew's ex-wife. Fergie has always had close ties to the royal family, not only through her children, but also through secret stories from the past. However, according to inside sources, Fergie played a much larger role in bringing Meghan closer to the royal family from the beginning than the public knows. Fergie and Meghan met before the royal wedding at events Meghan attended. She was close to Epstein and Maxwell and knew influential people who would later have close ties to members of the royal family. Remarkably, Fergie wasn't just an outsider. She saw Meghan's world, understanding the relationships Meghan had before other members of the royal family even knew her name. And it was Fergie, with her extensive network of connections, who played a crucial role in helping Meghan access opportunities that few could have imagined. Meghan's story is not a series of random events. From secret encounters at exclusive events to contact with people closely connected to Epstein and Maxwell, everything led to an unexpected meeting at Soho House. That's where she first met Prince Harry, in a luxurious and classy setting, surrounded by influential people where everything seemed prearranged. Meghan Markle's story, from her early days as an aspiring actress to becoming part of the royal family, is not a story of chance. It's a journey built on relationships, secret encounters, and worlds that only those with a special connection can see. Meghan Markle's story is not simply a real-life fairy tale, but a testament to a carefully planned and courageous journey. What do you think of Meghan Markle? An intelligent woman who knows how to seize opportunities, or are there other hidden aspects to her? If you are impressed by her connections and influence, please leave a comment. Number 2, if you have a different opinion or feel unconvinced, please leave a comment. Number 5, don't forget to press like and subscribe to the channel book today so you don't miss out on insightful videos, analyzing influential figures, and revealing previously undisclosed secrets, e.g. In a short period of time, Meghan Markle has undergone a dramatic transformation from a Hollywood actress to a globally influential figure. She has not only entered the world of royalty, but also become a humanitarian activist, a future duchess, and all of this has led the public to question who helped her achieve this transformation, who opened the doors, and who guided her to these important steps. Such a rapid rise certainly couldn't have happened without the help of powerful hands. According to leaked information from insiders, Meghan's backer may not just be Soho House, a prominent address in the upper class, but also much older and more influential networks that Maxwell himself mentioned in his testimony before those pages were redacted. But why did Meghan's name appear in those redacted files? The answer may not only concern herself, but also protect those who brought her into this world of power. Influential men's sponsors and prominent figures from Hollywood, New York, London, and even those with close ties to royalty. Meghan, though only an actress, if she had ever been in these high society settings, could have witnessed events and heard stories that would have been embarrassing for those at the top of power. And that's why all the efforts to conceal her name weren't to protect her, but to protect the powerful forces that created the opportunity for her. Meghan wasn't a threat. She was a witness who could shed light on stories they didn't want exposed. This made things even more tense because, according to those close to her, Meghan not only carried memories and connections she wasn't seeking, but stories that could cause trouble for those in power if they fell into the wrong hands. B. She was there, she saw and understood what was going on in those rooms of power. When someone like Meghan rises so quickly, another force emerges to stop her. That force is Prince William, who has drawn a clear line. He is not only protecting his family, but also the monarchy from inappropriate relationships from Epstein's past. And this is why Prince William doesn't allow Meghan to return to the royal inner circle, not because of public controversies, but because of the unwanted relationships and connections she has had. When Prince Andrew attempted to attend a ceremony at Balmoral, William confronted him directly with the situation, either him or me. Ultimately, Andrew had to leave. This clearly shows that William no longer tolerated the presence of those connected to Epstein, or those deeply involved in the royal family's world. For William, Meghan was not just a stranger, but a crucial witness who could shed light on stories the royal family was trying to erase. He wasn't against Harry, but against a past that Harry had brought into the royal family, along with its indelible shadows. This story begins at high society gatherings on luxurious yachts, where hushed conversations and secret deals were made under the glittering lights. It was in these places that Meghan first stepped into the world of power that she would later understand better than ever. Meghan Markle's story from Hollywood actress to Duchess is not a tale of chance, but a journey woven from hidden relationships and events the world wasn't ready to confront. Meghan's story isn't just about sudden prominence, but also about unexpected encounters in intimate settings no one could have imagined. Before becoming part of the royal family, Meghan had already reached into high society spaces few could access. Late-night parties, secret meetings, and private conversations held in the inner chambers of the elite, where connections, power, and finances can change the world. In all these moments, Meghan was more than just a young, ambitious woman seeking her opportunity. She was present at pivotal moments in the world of power, and these events shaped her public image. But Meghan's story isn't just about relationships. It's also about the decisions she had to make in her early years in the world of power. Despite being just a Hollywood actress, Meghan faced temptations no one could have imagined. She not only needed to navigate a competitive and scheming world, but also had to learn how to manage complex relationships to survive within a powerful social network. The decisions she made during those years profoundly influenced the path she chose. But did Meghan truly understand the full implications of these relationships' consequences she couldn't see immediately? Once she entered the royal world, Meghan faced not only public scrutiny, but also the calculating and suspicious eyes of those who had long been in that world. The relationships she had built, the old friends she had met, all became part of this challenging new life. While many members of royalty entered public life at a young age, Meghan didn't have that advantage. She had to learn to adjust to a world where rules and discretion were paramount. But could Meghan maintain these relationships without jeopardizing her own future? Throughout her journey, Meghan Markle has always faced a crucial choice to continue her ambitious path or to sacrifice a part of her past to better suit her new role in the royal family. But those choices weren't always easy. Meghan wasn't just a celebrity in the crowd. She was a figure surrounded by secrets that perhaps only she truly understood. The nature of the relationships and personal motivations behind these closed doors could force her to confront difficult decisions, choices that could shape her future within a royal family that is not easily swayed by change. A world where introductions can change everything. Their appearances are not just formalities, but the key to unlocking the doors of power. Favors and assistance are not given openly, but are exchanged through glances, subtle handshakes, and unspoken words. In that space, young women are not only noticed, but also challenged, tested, and shaped by the names they meet and the opportunities they are given. Imagine the scene, melodious music playing the scent of luxurious perfume wafting through the air, the clinking of glasses echoing in the warm atmosphere, and a girl named Hoa standing under the warm lights, completely unaware that the faces she meets that night will determine her future. And at that very moment, Meghan is no longer just an ordinary Hollywood actress. She became someone that powerful figures recognized, someone they not only kept an eye on, but also secretly courted and supported, moving her from one circle to another. These steps were not merely career advancements, but sophisticated maneuvers that propelled her to success. Then one day, when she met Prince Harry, she didn't come as an outsider. She entered his life as someone who had witnessed the very world he had spent his life trying to protect and avoid. And that is why the omitted passages in Maxwell's testimony are so important. Virginia Roberts requested Meghan's testimony not simply because she was a prominent young duchess, but because she possessed knowledge and connections that held the key to deeply hidden secrets within the world of power. Maxwell's statements caused a stir as they indicated that Meghan was not dangerous because of what she did, but because of what she knew. She held secret stories that no one wanted exposed. And as voices continue to rise from prison cells, from the courts, and from secret files, the storm that began to build from that luxury yacht is slowly becoming an unstoppable flood. The question now isn't whether Meghan's past will be exposed. The question is this world truly ready to confront what lies hidden in her past? The secrets quietly waiting to be revealed will change how we perceive not only Meghan, but also the hidden networks of power she was once a part of. And when the truths concealed for so many years are brought to light, things will never be the same again. Every secret has an expiration date, and the blacked-out text cannot forever conceal the brewing storm. Is this a fairy tale of love or a meticulously orchestrated move from the shadows of power circles? The answer may lie within what you just perceived. Do you choose to believe in destiny or predestination? Leave a word below to express your opinion. Subscribe and turn on notifications to join us in unraveling the next pieces that they want you to forget. Like if you believe that light always finds its way. Thank you for being here. The truth continues. Princess Anne and Princess Kate aimed at repositioning or more bluntly isolating Queen Camilla. The royal legacy does not tolerate dilution. And when the gatekeepers begin to move, this is not petty rivalry, but a self-defense mechanism of an entire institution. So what is really happening? Let's decode it together. It was once an abstract concept, but at Buckingham right now it carries immense weight heavy enough to crush individual egos and reshape an entire reign. Why is a system built on continuity suddenly showing such deep fractures? Are we witnessing a transition or a form of natural elimination? This analysis is based on public sentiment, body language, and theories circulating within the royal watching community and has not been officially confirmed. We are discussing this objectively. The memory file of the late Diana is being reopened. The coldness of Anne or Kate is not a momentary emotion, it is a defensive reaction of a system that eliminates what it deems illegitimate. It may be the system's self-protective response to what it considers incompatible with the standards of the throne. But on this chessboard of the century, who is the one commanding the game and who is merely a pawn to decode the present? We are compelled to look into the mirror of the past. But is Kate truly acting alone? In a world governed by rules, no move made by the Princess of Wales is without the consent of the man at the top of the line of succession, Prince William. Sources leaking from Kensington Palace suggest that William maintains a polite but cold distance from his stepmother. To William, Camilla remains a permanent reminder of the years of suffering endured by his mother Diana. If Kate is the one carrying out the rituals of isolation on the public stage, then William is the one approving that strategy behind closed doors. Imagine a chessboard where the King Charles is trying to protect the Queen Camilla, while the Rook and the Bishop William and Kate are quietly closing in to prepare for a new reign, a reign they want to be completely cleansed of past controversies. This is not merely a family conflict, it is the preparation for the cleanest possible transfer of power. The palace has never been a place of just tea parties and roses. It is a grand stage of perfectly managed appearances, where the undercurrents of power collide with brutal force. The history of Buckingham Palace is no stranger to purges of power from the days of Henry VIII to the present. But why, in the 21st century, does the question of Camilla's legitimacy still provoke figures like Princess Anne to such determination? The answer lies not in the past, but in the future of the crown. Never underestimate the power of the men in gray, the private secretaries and senior advisors who keep the royal machine running. Why would they allow these rumors to spread? Never underestimate the power of the men in gray, the private secretaries and senior advisors who operate the royal machine. So why let the rumors circulate? The objective is clear: to protect the symbolic authority of the crown. If the public begins to view the royal family as a long-running soap opera, its dignity erodes. Therefore, repositioning Camilla into a more subdued role becomes a way to excise a troublesome tumor and restore the calm that Buckingham Palace deems necessary. So, if history is riddled with blemishes, why has the case of the current queen become the focal point of such harsh scrutiny from within the institution itself, specifically from what is believed to be Princess Anne's perspective? Perhaps the issue lies not only in the past, but in the very definition of legitimacy. Before we delve deeper into an examination of these fractures, let us reset the context of the broader picture. Caught between ironclad rules and human emotion, is a position ever permanently secured by a title alone, or does it require the consent of the gatekeepers of history? What do you think about the real power operating behind those closed doors? We need to acknowledge a fundamental reality: the perfection of the royal family is by nature a triumph of image management. Yet behind the programmed smiles and the choreographed waves, history has shown that the palace has always been a miniature geopolitical hotspot of ambition and conflict. This is not a new phenomenon of our time, it is a genetic code passed down through generations. From royal succession rivalries recorded in history books to whispered conversations in dark corridors, drama is not a system flaw. It appears to be a feature of life at the very top. This variable hangs over King Charles and the entire family structure. The public acting as observers is placing the whole system under a microscope. Every fleeting glance, a furrowed brow, or a physical distance between family members is decoded as an SOS signal. It is this very scrutiny that fuels an endless spiral of speculation about hidden alliances and internal fractures. If the royal family is viewed as a machine, then the emergence of Camilla and later the separation of Harry and Meghan represent its most severe stress tests. Their departure and the statements issued from across the ocean inadvertently activated internal pressures, making the effort to maintain a glossy exterior more difficult than ever. Yet what is truly astonishing is the family's ability to freeze their emotions in public. But do not let that stillness deceive you. Analysts suggest that the real fracture does not lie in the external noise, but in the very foundation itself. And the epicenter of this latest seismic shift is believed to revolve around Princess Anne. This conflict goes beyond ordinary differences of opinion. It is existential to the future direction of the monarchy. According to prevailing theories, Princess Anne, often described as the royal family's iron arm, appears to have delivered an assessment, or rather a blunt warning, regarding Camilla's position. This is not personal jealousy, but a matter of principle. There is information suggesting that Anne pointed out a fundamental truth, one core factor that led her to believe Camilla's presence at the very top violates a sacred, unwritten rule, that she represents something fundamentally at odds with it. Could Princess Anne's warning be the final safeguard protecting the dynasty's legacy? Or is it the spark for a brutal transfer of power in the battle between traditional duty and a new reality? Who truly holds the soul of the monarchy? Leave your reasoning below. In systems management theory, when an external factor is perceived as a threat to core stability, the system's self-defense mechanisms are triggered. The chaotic developments we are witnessing at Buckingham Palace may in fact be the convulsions of a process of natural elimination within the power structure. Too many variables are operating beneath the surface, making outside observers feel as though they are lost in a labyrinth. Yet, when the data points are connected, a common pattern begins to emerge: the gradual isolation of the Queen Consort's position. Has the conclusion to reposition Camilla's role already been reached behind closed doors? Internal resistance to Camilla's status is not surprising when viewed against the trajectory of her rise. What is striking, however, is the scale of this undercurrent and the figures involved. We are talking about Princess Anne and Princess Kate. In the psychological profiles of the royal family, these two are consistently classified as the stabilizers. They embody duty, responsibility, and a near-absolute commitment to staying within the established rails of tradition. Princess Kate, in particular, has always been seen as a model of quiet perfection. So why are these exemplary guardians of the temple believed to be behind a campaign to restore order at the palace? When even the most moderate figures begin to act, it is a signal that the system has reached a red line. To understand their motives, we must return to a core concept: tradition. For the British monarchy, tradition is not merely habit, it is the only operating system that confers legitimacy. It is the invisible thread that connects the present to centuries of history. Adhering to protocol is how they merge into the endless current of kings and queens who came before them. It is how they tell the world, we are the guardians of identity. If this thread is severed or diluted by elements deemed incompatible, the monarchy loses its sense of the sacred and faces the risk of an identity collapse. And it was precisely at this sensitive crossroads that a symbolic event occurred, one that shook the ancient walls of the palace. It was a moment of silence, yet its echo was louder than any declaration. Recently, there have been moments that the public has scrutinized closely, especially during official events. For example, at the reception welcoming the German delegation in December 2025, Princess Kate performed a graceful and natural double curtsy once to King Charles and immediately afterward to Queen Camilla. The cameras clearly captured the scene. She smiled, exchanged warm greetings, and Camilla even responded with an air kiss. It was a gesture of courtesy, expressing respect fully in accordance with protocol. However, public opinion still tends to analyze smaller moments from earlier occasions, such as slightly more restrained greeting gestures at past events, for example, the 2023 coronation, where some observers sensed a departure from strict traditional norms. Even so, body language experts note that these subtle variations may simply reflect natural adaptation to context rather than signaling any form of resistance. Having spent more than a decade mastering royal protocol, Kate's every gesture is typically carefully considered. So when we observe a combination of public deference and more relaxed moments, could this be a sign of a royal family gradually modernizing preserving tradition while becoming more flexible in its communication? Or is it simply a diversity of ways in which respect can be expressed? This subtle transgression, if we may call it that, seems to stem from a historical wound that never truly healed. It leads us to a haunting hypothesis, one that the public, and perhaps even members of the royal family themselves, have long wondered about the alternative scenario. If the variable named Diana had remained as queen, would the current power structure have fractured so deeply? Could the turmoil, Prince Harry's departure, and the fratricidal tensions between brothers be the direct consequences of an uneasy replacement? Many analysts argue that Princess Kate's perceived coolness is in fact a reflection of a collective psyche. It represents the quiet resistance of those who believe that Queen Camilla's path to the throne lacks one crucial element: the consent of the heart. To fully decode the princess's actions, we must place her in the correct position: a future queen, a queen consort in waiting. She is not merely a family member, but the blueprint for the next reign. In the theory of royal governance, the individual must always sacrifice personal ego to protect the constitutional order. Yet, we cannot rule out a broader, more macro-level hypothesis. Perhaps this is not an act of defiance at all, but rather a signal of a comprehensive software update unfolding under King Charles's reign. The king's ultimate goal is to bring the heavy chariot of the monarchy up to the speed of the 21st century. In the course of this restructuring, rituals rooted in submission, such as formal bowing, may be gradually pared back to make room for greater equality and a more modern sensibility. The public's reaction is the most intriguing variable in this equation. In an era that prizes authenticity, what is perceived as Kate's rebellion has inadvertently created a peculiar allure. It demonstrates that members of the royal family are not merely historical puppets pulled along by obsolete rules. They are independent thinkers willing to redefine what truly constitutes core values. Yet the paradox remains. For conservatives, bowing rituals are not mere pageantry. They are the skeletal framework that keeps the body of the monarchy upright. If formality and structure are stripped away, can the royal family still retain its sense of the sacred and its distinction from ordinary celebrities? So in your view, are Kate's actions a step forward for freedom? Or do they risk diluting traditional values? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video insightful, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming in-depth analyses. We need to understand that on the royal chessboard, protocol is not merely about personal respect. It is the steel framework that keeps the historic castle from collapsing under the storms of time. Princess Anne has long been known as one of the most devoted and steadfastly traditional members of the royal family. She embodies austerity, responsibility, and an unwavering prioritization of duty, qualities that the British public holds in particularly high regard. According to a YouGov survey in early 2026, she continues to maintain a consistently high favorability rating of around 70%. In a period when the monarchy is facing profound change, from the king's health to the challenge of adapting to the 21st century, many have speculated about Princess Anne's role as a guardian of standards. She is often likened to a protector of Queen Elizabeth II's legacy, emphasizing continuity, ritual, and humility before the public. The relationship between Princess Anne and Queen Camilla has been closely observed. While there have been rumors of differing perspectives, with some sources suggesting that Anne favors stricter adherence to tradition, recent events have instead projected an image of unity. A clear example was Christmas 2025 at Sandringham. The two women appeared together wearing coordinated red outfits, leading the family to church, a gesture many newspapers described as a symbol of unity between the two most influential women in the royal family. Of course, the monarchy does not make everything public. There may well be internal discussions about how to balance immutable tradition with necessary adaptation, especially when Camilla represents a more modern, approachable style. But rather than open conflict, the system appears to be self-correcting. Anne continues her role as the quiet workhorse, carrying out hundreds of engagements each year, while Camilla remains at the king's side during major public events. This leads to a key question in the balance between preserving heritage and embracing renewal. What does Princess Anne truly represent? A force that holds the core firmly in place, or an integral part of a smooth, carefully managed transition? What's your take? She fears that accepting these looser standards would send the wrong message that the monarchy is lowering itself in order to compromise. Returning to the historic moment of the coronation, while the world saw crowns and robes, more discerning observers sensed a subtle discord in the atmosphere. The whispers there were not mere social pleasantries, but tremors of an underlying collision. For Princess Anne, the issue has moved far beyond questions of protocol or even generational differences, as in the case of Princess Kate. This is a deeply personal and historical issue. She has witnessed the entire chronicle of the complex emotional relationship between King Charles and Camilla. And now, from the perspective of a guardian of legacy, she fears that the immutable principles of the monarchy are being privatized by personal emotion. A psychological hypothesis emerges. Princess Anne believes she has inherited the spiritual will of Queen Elizabeth II, the responsibility to prevent the erosion of standards. She thus becomes a counterbalancing force to the soft influence that Queen Camilla is exerting over the king. Anne's steadfastness is revealed in a small yet enormously symbolic detail: resistance at the level of titles. Her insistence on using the term queen consort rather than simply queen is not linguistic stubbornness. It is a political boundary Anne draws to underscore the limits of power that the position derives from marriage, not from divine right or bloodline succession. And then the story turns to a new, more mysterious chapter: absence. Camilla's absence, attributed to a respiratory infection. But in courtly language, illness can sometimes be a euphemism for a temporary pause in power, a cooling-off period to calm heated minds. At the center of the storm, where does King Charles III stand? On one side is his lifelong, deeply rooted love for Camilla. On the other is his absolute loyalty to duty and his profound respect for his sister, Princess Anne. Royal psychological analysts suggest that Charles is facing the most acute dilemma of his life. He understands that if he defends Camilla too forcefully, he risks provoking resistance from his most devoted allies, figures like Anne and Kate. But if he lets go, he would be betraying the woman who stood by him through decades of being shunned by the world. Could Camilla's absence then be a painful compromise that Charles was forced to accept in order to keep the family from fracturing? A king who reigns over a kingdom yet cannot secure peace within his own palace. This may be the greatest tragedy of Charles III's reign. However, in the language of the court, health is sometimes the perfect screen behind which political temperature adjustments quietly take place. Systems analysts raise the question, is this merely a medical issue or a strategic pause? A necessary step back to cool internal tensions that had escalated to a breaking point, especially following firm signals from Princess Anne. If the hypothesis of a temporary suspension of power holds true, then this could be seen as a self-defense mechanism of the monarchy itself. The system is self-adjusting to ensure that the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II remains the sole guiding compass. Camilla's absence, whatever the reason, has inadvertently restored space for traditional values to shine. The final decision of Buckingham Palace is not about any single individual, but about the survival of a symbol. It is a choice between yielding to present emotions or safeguarding timeless majesty. In your view, is this withdrawal a sign of concession, or the overture to a new order established by loyal guardians of the temple? The British monarchy has always known how to survive storms, and this time is no exception. This content is purely for reference based on unverified hypotheses and public speculation. We invite discussion from an objective analytical perspective. Don't just sit back and observe, become part of the court of public opinion. If you believe Princess Anne and Kate are right to defend tradition, comment 1. If, on the other hand, you believe the monarchy needs renewal and greater empathy, comment 0. Hit like if you appreciate this style of analysis, and subscribe to join us as we continue to decode the next mysteries of power. Thank you, and see you in the next dossier. Within the silent corridors of power, silence itself can sometimes carry a weight more terrifying than any official statement. A hypothesis is currently drawing intense attention among elite observers that the succession mechanism at Kensington does not operate merely on a simple when the time comes basis, but is instead governed by an emergency brake system. As a royal figure approaches the milestone age of 40, triggering the activation of a massive trust fund from the past, we might assume this to be an automatic process. But no. For a long time, the public has been swept up in media sparring, yet according to our analysis, the true tip of the iceberg lies in the flow of finances. The hypothesis raised here is this. Does an older brother acting as the future guardian of the system have the right to intervene in the flow of a younger brother's assets on the basis of moral standards? There are indications that a strategy referred to as a localized asset freeze is being considered. Rather than impulsive outbursts of anger, this appears to be a cold, calculated move grounded in a doctrine of preserving honor. The core argument placed on the scales is this: when a member breaks away from the system's shared orbit, do they retain the same privilege of drawing upon that system's resources? To truly understand this legal machine, we must look away from the headlines and step into the imagined space of the muniment room, the repository of memory and highly classified documents. According to analytical data on aristocratic customs, the key to this matter does not lie in existing law, but in a more abstract concept, the letter of wishes. A handwritten document from 1993 is now regarded as the most critical variable. For 3 decades, it was merely a sheet of paper resting silently in the archives. Today, however, amid shifts in family structure, this document has suddenly become a legal shield. Our hypothesis is this: the document does not merely govern money, it establishes a moral filter. Can a handwritten piece of paper from 30 years ago truly have the power to halt the flow of millions of dollars? That is the million-dollar question we need to answer. If you appreciate our approach of hypothesis and analysis rather than baseless rumors, leave a comment saying agreed and share this video with friends who share a passion for uncovering the truth. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because the most unexpected variables have yet to be revealed. Its contents, though never officially made public, are believed to enshrine an unbreakable principle of the late mother: wealth must serve the well-being of her children, yet at the same time function as a resource to protect and uphold the dignity of the family. So what happens when these two objectives, individual interest and family honor, move in opposite directions? In your view, within a system that places such high value on tradition, can a handwritten spiritual testament truly possess enough power to override rigid financial rules? Or is this merely the opening move in a broader redefinition of inheritance itself? For many years, the working assumption of the one who departed rested on what was considered an absolutely safe variable, that the flow of finances from the maternal bloodline was untouchable, entirely separate from the royal family. He believed that biological status, being Diana's son, would always outrank political status. However, a sharp counter-argument is now being actively debated. On the side of the heir to the throne, William, there appears to be a deliberate effort to redefine the concept of entitlement. The reasoning here is not emotional, but rooted in asset management logic, the purpose of the capital itself. If the 1993 letter is treated as the constitution of the trust, then it contains a brutal paradox the system is now forced to confront. The original intent of the bequest was to provide resources for independence and security. Yet in today's reality, that very flow of capital is suspected of being used to finance a media machine that turns back and attacks the very foundation that created it. This is what analysts describe as the self-destruction paradox, using a mother's legacy to pay lawyers and PR teams in a campaign that erodes the honor of her own family. In the eyes of the system's managers, this is no longer about purchasing a house, but about financing a confrontational campaign. A common counter-question is often raised: is this simply greed? Publicly available financial data suggests the answer is no. As Prince of Wales, William's income and assets far exceed any personal needs. Therefore, this move to freeze assets is not economic in nature, but instead reflects a strategy of protecting the legacy brand. The system's greatest fear is not the loss of money, but the commodification of pain. The transfer of physical assets, potentially including priceless personal mementos, to a location beyond direct oversight in California, carries the risk of their becoming mere props for entertainment products on digital platforms. William, in his role as guardian, is sending a powerful signal: sacred legacy cannot be collateral for Hollywood. To decode the next move, we must shift our geographic coordinates, leaving London for Althorp, the ancestral seat of the Spencer family. There, a third figure stands at the center of the storm, the 9th Earl Spencer. Consider the extraordinarily complex position of this figure. In 1997, he was the one who made a historic vow before the world to protect both nephews from being consumed by the royal institution. But nearly 30 years later, that promise has turned into a diplomatic curse. He is no longer merely an uncle. He has become the last remaining buffer zone. Well-informed sources suggest that the mode of communication from the royal side has shifted, no longer framed as family appeals, but as institutional pressure. The implicit message sent to Althorp carries more political weight than familial warmth. It is a demand for the synchronization of loyalty. The logic William's side presents to his uncle is cold, yet difficult to refute. How can he protect his sister's legacy if he continues to fund activities that actively harm that very legacy? The argument from the heir to the throne. William is rooted more in military logic than in family sentiment. If an estimated $10 million in assets were to be released, at this moment it would not simply be a birthday gift. In the system's eyes, this would amount to funding the counterforce. The media apparatus the younger brother is building is no longer viewed as a peripheral nuisance, but has been identified as a competing entity actively eroding the credibility of the very institution William is destined to lead. Consequently, any flow of money from Althorp to California at this moment would be regarded as fuel for the next wave of attack. Earl Spencer now finds himself trapped at a brutal strategic crossroads. A subtle yet weighty implicit message has been delivered. Will he choose to stand with the stability of the crown or lend strength to an unstable variable? The Earl now faces a profound moral paradox. On one side lies the oath of blood, a commitment to protect the most vulnerable of his nephews. If he locks the vault, he risks becoming the villain in the next chapter of history, accused of betraying the wishes of his late sister. But on the other side stands political reality. William holds the power of the future. Defying the direction of the crown could lead to social isolation for the entire Spencer line. So what is the technical solution here? This is where we must understand a specialized financial mechanism of the aristocracy, the discretionary hold. The audience needs to understand that these trusts do not operate like an ATM. The trustees hold an emergency brake. Technically and legally, they have the authority to suspend distributions if they determine that the beneficiary is in a state of instability. In the past, this has applied to cases of bankruptcy or loss of behavioral control. But today, legal teams are expanding that definition. They argue that the beneficiary is operating under the influence of external hostile actors. A case file is being assembled to legitimize a carefully phrased answer, "not at this time." This is not confiscation, but a protective, temporary lock. Pressure at Althorp is reaching a breaking point. Two ends of the phone line, two opposing poles of power and rebellion, are both awaiting a decision. One side demands a freeze, the other demands liquidity. And the man in the middle understands one thing clearly: whichever choice he makes will constitute a breach of trust. However, William's move does not stop at internal pressure alone. Analysts suggest that the true force driving this hardline stance is a darker fear, one that extends far beyond Britain's borders. It is the scenario of a jurisdictional clash with courts in California, where royal secrets could be exposed in their most raw and unfiltered form. While the English countryside holds its breath, the real fuse is quietly smoldering 5,000 miles away. To outside observers, freezing the flow of money may look like a punitive move driven by personal motives. However, sources with deep insight into royal strategy point to a critical psychological shift. The motivation has moved from emotional anger to legal fear. On the desks of key decision-makers, a new file labeled California Jurisdiction Risk is being closely scrutinized. The real concern is not the heir's ability to spend money, but the asset permeation mechanisms inherent in the place where he now resides. We must remember one key technical factor. California is a jurisdiction that applies an exceptionally strict community property regime. This is precisely the technical trap that advisors are warning about. Top-tier lawyers have advanced a chilling hypothesis in asset management: the concept of commingling. Their argument is razor-sharp. Once inherited assets, whether cash or priceless heirlooms, cross the Atlantic and are deposited into shared household accounts or used to renovate jointly owned property, they lose their exempt status. At that point, legally speaking, it would no longer be the private property of the Spencer line. It would be transformed into marital property. And it is precisely this transformation that fuels the sleepless nights of legacy guardians in Britain. A professional risk manager never operates on faith in the permanence of love, but must plan for the worst-case scenario, the dissolution of a partnership. No matter how firmly the principles assert stability, the system itself is not permitted the luxury of optimism. If an asset division were to take place under the ruling of a Los Angeles court, the 50-50 rule could be triggered. Imagine a scenario in which historically significant emeralds or funds reserved exclusively for royal bloodlines are compelled to be transferred to an external entity as part of a divorce settlement. For the future head of the monarchy, this is not about losing money. It is an irreversible leakage of legacy. It is an apocalyptic vision in which family history becomes collateral on a negotiating table in America. This is a fear that is instinctive, reaching far beyond the scale of palaces. Whether it is a national treasure or simply an old family photo album, the desire to protect what our ancestors left behind and to ensure it is passed on to the right hands is entirely legitimate. I hope you and your families are safe and able to preserve your own core values. Our community is growing every day. Let me know in the comments which city or country you're following this story from. Is the concept of inheritance where you live viewed differently? Returning to the strategic chessboard. To neutralize this California trap, a complex legal maneuver is being pushed forward known as a protective trust variation. This is Plan B. If persuasion through emotion fails, the system will alter the distribution structure itself. The objective is no longer outright prevention, but a redefinition of ownership. Funds may be spent, but permanent control will never leave London. Could this protective trust variation be the comprehensive solution, allowing the elder brother to safeguard the legacy while the younger still receives support without being entangled? Or will this mark the beginning of an unprecedented transcontinental legal battle in royal history? Time will provide the most accurate answer. Instead of a direct wire transfer to Montecito, a far more intricate financial structure is now being put in place, a UK-based frozen subtrust. This is not expropriation, but a restructuring of ownership. The mechanism functions like a one-way valve. The beneficiary, Harry, would still retain the right to receive generated returns, passive income, that could be used, for example, to fund the education of the next generation. However, the principal and physical assets, such as historic jewelry, would remain permanently behind a legal firewall. The implicit message of this structure is unmistakable. You may benefit from the legacy, but you may not liquidate it. It entirely removes the risk of assets being sold off or becoming subjects of civil litigation in the United States. This strategy elevates the issue from an internal family dispute to a high-level corporate risk management problem. Technically speaking, London is issuing an expert judgment on its own CAPA. They argue that the beneficiary's current legal environment is not sufficiently secure to safeguard national assets. The objective is to construct a legal fortress around the memory of the late mother. All assets must remain on British soil, be governed by British law, and be placed entirely beyond the reach of California judges. As this fortress is being reinforced, the position of those outside the walls begins to resemble an economic siege. If moral negotiations fail, legal experts point to the existence of a Plan B, a move that is cold but constitutionally sound. That is the activation of the Protective Trust Variation Clause. Under normal circumstances, the distribution process at age 40 is automatic. The beneficiary has full discretion to invest, spend, or even squander the funds. However, a new legal argument is now being advanced, grounded in the principle of exception due to circumstances. Under this mechanism, nominal ownership would remain with Harry to avoid violating the will, but actual control would be completely separated. The $10 million inheritance would never leave London. It would be locked inside a digital vault managed by trustees loyal to the crown. What we are witnessing is a William acting not out of emotion, but out of concern for the survival of the system. But the question remains, where is the line between protection and expropriation? What do you see in this powerful figure? Leave a comment with the number 2 if you view this as tough love, a necessary action to prevent money from flowing into outside hands. Leave a comment with the number 5 if you see it as the cruelty of power, an economic punishment aimed at a weaker brother. The judgment is yours. Hit like to support the editorial team and subscribe to the channel now. We'll be back with classified files that have never been made public. This represents the pinnacle of soft power strategy. The beneficiary may receive an annual allowance drawn from interest sufficient to cover basic living expenses, but the vast sums required to sustain a high-security lifestyle and service large real estate mortgages would remain out of reach. By framing the action as a protective measure, the guardian William effectively arms himself with a shield of immunity against accusations of greed. The final argument placed before asset managers is not emotional, but a brutal financial forecast. If the full principal is released right now, the current burn rate projects that the entire legacy will evaporate within 36 months. We are holding the money not to seize it, but to ensure it survives for the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the future. The case from London is constructed on a cold balance sheet at the present level of spending on private security, prolonged litigation, and public image operations. The $10 million fund is projected to disappear rapidly. The Guardian's task, William, is no longer to placate his brother, but to enforce the duty of intergenerational capital preservation. The ultimate objective is to ensure that this pool of assets remains intact when the next generation, Archie and Lilibet, comes of age. This is an exceptionally shrewd communications move. It positions William as a visionary steward, while implicitly casting the Duke of Sussex as a high-risk investor, insufficiently equipped to manage the family legacy. Now imagine the psychological shock through the lens of game theory. Harry left the United Kingdom in search of absolute autonomy and escape from the control of the royal administrative apparatus. But if this protective trust mechanism is activated, he would be trapped in a bitter paradox, a 40-year-old man who, in operational financial terms, is supervised like a minor. This mechanism demands absolute transparency. Funds require receipts, spending requires justification. The trustees would become the filtering mechanism, and indirectly, they would report back to the head of the system. The implicit message is clear. You may leave the system, but the system's resources will not be used to finance opposition to it. Moreover, this strategy neutralizes every potential media attack. If Harry were to claim he has been stripped of his inheritance, William would have a legally impeccable response. The money hasn't gone anywhere. It is still there, completely secure, waiting for your children. This pushes Harry into a state of stalemate. For a Montecito elite lifestyle with operating costs estimated at millions of dollars per year, a frozen trust is as useless as an empty one. You can't pay a security team with projected interest. You can't settle legal bills with future promises. This is a cash flow problem. William is playing a long, strategic game, a war of attrition. He understands that his opponent does not have the time or the financial endurance to pursue a decades-long legal battle before the UK Supreme Court. To grasp why this valve-shutting move has sent shockwaves through California, we need to look at the macro-financial picture of the Sussex brand. Analysts assess that it is entering a state of severe income-expenditure imbalance. For years, Harry operated under the assumption of a permanent safety cushion provided by the Spencer inheritance. That was the final strategic reserve the royal family could not interfere with. But once that cushion is removed, a stark reality is exposed. The business outlook over the past 12 months has taken a negative turn. The $20 million Spotify deal ended in a very public rupture over performance issues. The Netflix partnership is now under heavy pressure to deliver commercially successful content, something that has yet to be achieved with any consistency. The era of easy money earned from celebrity status in Hollywood is drawing to a close, while fixed costs remain unchanged, most notably the massive mortgage on the Riven Rock estate. When we strip away the glossy veneer of private jets and a large entourage of aides, we arrive at the biggest iceberg in the Sussex financial statement's security costs. Since losing the protective umbrella of the state once funded by taxpayers, Harry has been forced to operate a private secret service of a scale comparable to that of a head of state. Experts estimate these costs at between $2 and $3 million per year. This is an enormous fixed expense, one capable of eroding any fortune if fresh cash flow is not continuously injected. Without a stable inheritance stream acting as an anchor, Harry is facing an existential crisis. He is now entirely dependent on the market value of attention in Hollywood. And as any risk manager will tell you, the market is a profoundly fickle friend. This liquidity pressure is producing a psychological state that observers describe as a siege mentality. From the insider's perspective, the moves coming out of London no longer look like protection, but like a systematic campaign of position neutralization. Look at the historical sequence. First came the removal of military titles, loss of hard power. Then the stripping of the HRH-style loss of soft power. Next was the loss of Frogmore Cottage, loss of geographic footing. And now, the system is targeting the final remaining link, the financial legacy left by his mother. The disparity in resources is staggering. One side controls the Duchy of Cornwall with effectively limitless resources, palaces, and treasuries. The other holds a massive mortgage and a podcast channel. For Harry, this is a brutal asymmetry. As the traditional doors at Althorp show signs of closing, the strategy has shifted. Intelligence sources indicate that an effort to activate auxiliary networks is now underway. Rather than confronting the guardian, Earl Spencer, or the enforcer, William, head-on, Harry is reportedly attempting to establish contact with the emotional wing of the Spencer family figures, such as Lady Sarah McCorquodale and Baroness Jane Fellows. The objective is to seek an internal alliance among those who still carry living memories of Diana's desire for freedom in order to apply pressure on the management mechanism. However, this scenario is giving rise to a tragic paradox. William seeks to freeze assets to prevent the commercialization of the family. Yet it is precisely this act of shutting off the money valve that may end up accelerating that very process. If the Spencer financial anchor is severed and the American dream turns into a liquidity nightmare, the Sussex couple would be pushed into a corner. To maintain their security apparatus and service their debts, they would be forced to exploit the only asset they have left: information. They would have to write more books, sell more previously undisclosed secrets, produce more shocking reality-based television content. Ironically, William's very act of financial containment could become the survival pressure that compels the other side to sell everything. As the mist settles over the Althorp estate, it becomes clear that this is no longer merely a dispute over money. It is a systemic tragedy in which the very effort to protect a legacy is triggering the mechanisms that may ultimately destroy it. The battle for control of the Spencer treasury teaches us a brutal yet necessary lesson about the law of cause and effect in economics. One of the fundamental principles of game theory is this: You cannot destroy the bridge between two opposing shores and still expect supply convoys to keep crossing it. For many years, the younger brother built his brand around the concept of freedom, freedom from the system, freedom from media scrutiny, and freedom from traditional rules. Yet it seems a critical variable was overlooked in this equation. True freedom always comes with a massive depreciation cost. You cannot spend 4 years dismantling the very foundation of your own privilege and then act surprised when the benefits tied to that foundation are deactivated. Through the analytical lens of this channel, William's actions do not stem from personal malice, but from the inevitability of the institution. He is carrying out a form of risk management that can best be described as tough love. He is drawing an inviolable red line. The memory and legacy of his late mother are cultural values, not derivative commodities to be traded for fame in Hollywood. Decision-makers in London recognize that if a shut-off valve is not installed immediately, the history of the Spencer family risks becoming raw material for the next season of a reality television series. Today, William appears to have accepted a strategic trade-off. He is willing to play the villain in his brother's contemporary memoir so that he can remain the guardian in the historical chronicle of Diana. Before we close this file, please note this content is purely for reference based on hypotheses and unverified public speculation. Join our review panel right here, type 1, in the comments if your curiosity has been sparked and you want us to continue digging into these shadow financial files. Type 0 if you have sharper counter-arguments regarding the royal family's strategic moves. Every like and subscribe is the energy that allows us to continue lifting the velvet curtain of mystery. Don't forget to turn on notifications because the truth always waits for the most patient. Goodbye, and see you in the next investigation. In systems theory, any entity, when abruptly separated and then suddenly returning, generates an impulse that alters the entire existing structure. 3 words that no one in positions of power wants to hear. Right now, Harry is back. After cycles of self-imposed exile and the eruption of opposing streams of information, the sudden appearance of a detached fragment in London is far from merely a media event. From an investigative perspective, this is not a social visit or a routine diplomatic ritual. Could we be witnessing the beginning of a heritage decryption? A mission driven by historical data, obscured for decades, pieces that the system has tried to secure to maintain the stability of the monarchy. The moment the private jet touched down on the runway at RAF Northolt, a gray zone of information began to spread. No ceremonies, no smiles for the cameras. This presence carried the character of a discreet system intrusion. The unusual increase in royal security around Clarence House, unexplained and sudden, is a reflexive instinct of the institution in response to an unpredictable variable. Why has silence become the palace's primary tool at this moment? In information analysis, silence is rarely a lack of data. Rather, it is a tactic to control cracks that are slowly emerging. Harry no longer appears as a lost individual. Instead, he embodies an aura of absolute consistency. No defiance, no anger, but the assurance of someone who holds a crucial key, one capable of rewriting the entire script that the system has long maintained. Behind closed doors, senior officials seem to be facing a ghost from the past. Decisions once considered essential to protect the crown are now suddenly becoming fragile. As the truth begins to leak through the cracks of the power structure, how will the entire system react to prevent a chain reaction of collapse? This comeback is not spontaneous. It feels like the fateful intersection point, where events that began years ago have finally reached a point of collision. Has Harry discovered a truth powerful enough to break even the oldest security protocols? We stand at a historical crossroads. Is this the final attempt at transparency, or the beginning of a new chapter where heritage secrets will no longer be the most secure protective barrier? What is your hypothesis? 1. Did Harry return to seek genuine reconciliation under new conditions? 2. Or did he bring with him a truth key that would force the system to change permanently? Share your analysis in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to follow the second half of this investigation, where we'll unravel what's really behind the whispers at the palace. Those who believe Harry is merely seeking attention must confront a completely different reality. He didn't return to relive the past, but to reconciliation with it. As the palace walls seemed to hold their breath, a disturbing theory began to spread. What if Harry's entire belief system about his identity had been meticulously orchestrated from the very beginning? Internal sources from Highgrove Manor revealed the existence of a sealed file bearing an identifier, Operation Guardian. This is not part of a royal ceremony, but appears to be a security protocol never before published. The appearance of this file, bearing the late Queen's coat of arms and linked to Charles Windsor's name just weeks after the 1997 Paris attacks, opened a rift in Harry's identity structure. Inside that file, the most haunting element wasn't the administrative documents, but a handwritten letter from a woman who had long been silent. Diana, from a strategic analysis perspective, this letter contains not only emotions, but also a blueprint. System alert. Diana seemed to have foreseen a scenario being constructed behind her back, a mechanism designed to shield her youngest son from a truth she believed he deserved to face when the time was right. The reaction from the royal legal apparatus was immediate and forceful. An attempt to block the flow of information was launched, but it seemed too late. Harry, with cold certainty, issued a landmark statement: "I have the right to know, and now the whole world will know too." This is not anger, but a re-establishment of ownership over a personal history that has been manipulated. This investigation leads us to a complex network of secret guardians. A chilling entry was discovered in Princess Anne's personal diary in 2003. The exile pact must remain in effect. He must not know about it. The big question here is, what did they agree to expel him from? Anne, the embodiment of steadfastness, now appears as a guardian of the crown's deepest truths. William's quiet involvement and Camilla's stabilization role further reinforced the hypothesis of a coordinated effort to maintain the current structure at all costs. Every diplomatic smile now seems a protective shell for a silent agreement. It has existed for 2 decades. We are faced with a paradox of truth and loyalty. As the layers of Operation Guardian are gradually peeled away, the picture of British royal stability is being subjected to unprecedented pressure. What is your hypothesis? 1. Are these secrets necessary tools to protect the survival of the throne? 2. Or is transparency the only remedy to mend the rifts in the brotherly and fatherly relationships? Please leave a comment with the number. If you believe that the truth needs to be revealed in its entirety or number. If you believe there are secrets that are best left undisturbed in order to maintain the integrity of the institution. Press like and subscribe to the channel. Join us in our in-depth investigation into the power dynamics hidden behind the glitz and glamour. In an institution where survival depends on legitimacy, stability is not just a goal, but a tactic for navigating the flow of information. From a systems analysis perspective, we see a persistent effort to protect the concepts of lineage matrix and bloodline heritage. In 2019, an information hygiene protocol was activated to divert international press attention away from DNA theories. The goal was clear: to prevent a crisis of confidence that could turn royal standards into an uncontrolled topic of discussion. Beyond just media coverage, legal barriers have been erected to delay any investigation into the transparency of succession documents. All requests for data access are denied under the guise of privacy protection, but in reality, this is how the system protects its resources. Breakpoint: his most sensitive moments. However, the truth often finds a way to emerge through silences. The most devastating shock for Harry didn't come from legal obstacles, but from a symbolic silence. In the final days of Queen Elizabeth II, a final covenant was made. Every senior member received a sealed letter of blessing except for Harry. Was this exclusion a mistake, or the final consolidation of the covenant of silence? Long-standing for Meghan, this is an unmistakable signal Harry has been turned into a pawn in a large-scale preservation strategy. Throughout the years of conflict and exile, the chaos we see is actually a meticulously orchestrated scenario to conceal a fundamental truth, one that leads directly to the most powerful figure today, King Charles. In an isolated area of Balmoral Castle, where secrets are usually kept hidden by the stillness of the forest, a fateful dialogue unfolds. Now standing face to face with his father, the highest guardian of the system, Harry asks for a resolution. Absolute exposure. No assistance, no media, only the truth, and irreparable cracks remained. In that private room, the tension built up by decades of avoidance reached a breaking point. King Charles, his voice heavy with regret and resignation, seemed to have acknowledged something that shattered every piece of his identity Harry had ever held. It was no longer a family conversation. It was a moment that life script. The story of a prince is completely torn apart, revealing a naked reality behind the velvet curtain. Finally, all the masks were removed. The existence of the Highgrove files, codenamed Operation Guardian. And the haunting letter from Diana has been officially confirmed. Charles doesn't deny it. He admits to having approved it from the very beginning. From a systems analysis perspective, this is an attempt to establish a hypothetical safe zone to protect Harry from psychological trauma. However, for Harry, this wasn't protection, but a battle. Denying the right to self-determination and individual identity in a systematic way. The burden of the accusation, "You have chosen duty over truth," now hung like a knife cutting into the foundations of the dynasty. Charles, in a state of profound shock, attempted to explain the impossible. The post-Diana era was a time when the royal institution fell into a serious operational crisis. To preserve it, system integrity, and with the line of succession so fragile, a special arrangement was implemented, a scenario Diana had vehemently opposed during her lifetime. The king's silence in response to the question, "Am I part of the plan?" that is the most accurate answer. In the world of symbols of power, individuals are sometimes merely pawns in a larger-scale survival strategy. The meeting at Balmoral did not end with a solution, but with a resolution. Tactical retreat. Harry walked away, leaving behind a king haunted by the very secrets he had once so painstakingly guarded. The portraits of Diana were covered up at Clarence House, not out of disrespect, but as a manifestation of a psychological pressure of inheritance. That's too much. However, the final variable lies in a rebellious act from the mother's past. Diana's voice, frozen in recordings and handwritten letters, was unearthed from an ancient, secure safe. The message was simple: "To my son, if they ever try to silence you." This shows that Diana had anticipated this confrontation decades in advance. She had established the last line of defense. For Harry, an information loop is only opened when the system attempts to control him again. Diana has always lived in fear of her being erased and her memories reshaped by power structures. But she managed to establish one fail-safe backup mechanism for the future. The recording begins with words carrying the weight of thousands of unshed tears, an echo from the past affirming that the system has failed to bury the truth. She spoke not as a royal symbol, but as an instinctive protector. Diana presented a chillingly detailed theory about a systematic strategy aimed at severing the emotional connection between her and her sons. This is an attempt to controlling the flow of emotional data, minimizing her influence to preserve the institution's image at all costs. Diana's whispered words, "They thought you wouldn't ask anything, but I knew you would." This officially broke the silence in Harry's mind. A name not found in official records yet clearly present through subtle hints. Bloodline. This not only shook the very foundations of identity Harry had accepted, but it was also the ultimate liberation. The instincts that had been keeping Harry awake all this time weren't delusions, but rather the echo of truth, which his mother had sealed away, waiting for this very moment. For Harry, this was no longer a confirmation of pain, but freedom. A freedom not controlled by any royal script. With Diana's words still echoing in his ears, Harry made a choice that shook the very foundations of the monarchy. A 72-hour ultimatum. It was sent directly to the king's private secretary. This is not a threat, but a challenge. Public reconciliation. Either the system must reveal the truth itself, or Harry will be the one to lift the curtain. This single strategically significant email has put the royal press office in a precarious situation. Systemic chaos. The palace walls no longer whispered, but roared in the face of the most explosive confrontation in modern history. Within, the power struggle of the dynasty time was no longer on the side of the gatekeepers. Control over the flow of information had officially shifted from the institution to Harry. A frequency collision. A heated argument ensued between the two heirs. William, in a last-ditch effort to protect the stability of the system, attempted to trigger emotional barriers from the past. However, Harry responded with a cold conviction, "The system chose duty over my identity." This is no longer a personal debate, but a refusal to compromise of an entity that has seen through the entire operating mechanism of the organization. Behind that decisiveness is Meghan, who plays the role of a strategic catalyst. After a long period of silence, she urged Harry to undertake a mission. Anatomy of the past thoroughly. The goal is not revenge, but to unleash the system to reclaim her true identity. Meanwhile, Camilla is present in a state of defensive chaos. Her attempts to establish a legal wall to silence this variable completely failed in the face of King Charles's exhaustion. The king's whispered words, "It's too late." This was an admission of the collapse of all the oldest security barriers. The Windsor institution was paralyzed, with half attempting to appease public opinion and the other half holding their breath in the face of a crisis. The heritage has been distorted. It's about to be revealed. Harry wasn't just planning a typical press release, he was orchestrating a whole new one: media revolution. In an unprecedentedly bold statement, Harry broke all royal protocol. He directly connected with the public through digital platforms, without intermediaries, without censorship, and without a script crafted by PR professionals. This was a significant move: direct decoding. He sent it to millions, exposing the secrets that had haunted him for years. Harry wasn't looking for a sensational headline. He was undertaking a mission. Verify the facts. On a large scale, it asserted that the world deserves to hear what really happened behind the glamorous velvet curtain. Harry no longer held back any reservations. He began with a statement breaking decades of silence. "They lied to me and they lied to you all." From an investigative perspective, this is a case system audit, the most public in history. Harry exposed the entire structure of Guardian campaign, the coded entries in Anne's diary, and especially Diana's message from the afterlife. The message, "My mother has always just wanted me to be free." It resonated across continents, transforming an internal secret into a shared human pain. The truth was no longer confined within the walls of Balmoral. It had become the property of the public. In just a few hours, the digital world exploded in a revolution. Global payments. Hashtags such as Royal Reckoning. Good justice for Harry. It's not just a media trend, but an expression of a movement demanding transparency. However, the palace's reaction is what's most shocking. 24 hours of absolute silence. In communication theory, this silence is called a risky, strategic vacuum. The lack of rebuttal or statement is tacit confirmation of the existence of the forbidden protocols that the royal family has long feared. The institution, once proud of its stability, is now facing a profound crisis of confidence, where old rituals are no longer sufficient to conceal internal rifts. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds gathered not to protest in the usual way, but to establish a new order of trust. The banners tell the truth, and Diana deserves to be treated better. This demonstrates how Diana's legacy transformed from personal pain into a driving force for systemic change. This is not just Harry's story. It's a lesson about the price of silence and the collapse of old values before the unfiltered power of truth. A deep crack has formed at the very core of the monarchy, a crack that directly threatens the very survival of the Windsor kingdom in the new era. Within the power structure of the kingdom, the emergence of a transparency variable from Harry has created a powerful counter-impact on William, a figure previously considered the central pillar of stability. Behind that resolute exterior lies a struggle, a civil war of the mind, caught between loyalty to the institution and the pain of fractured trust. For the first time in years, the heir to the throne undertook a mission: tactical retreat away from the front lines of defense. The abrupt cancellation of public routes and the establishment of a zone of silence at Anmer Hall was not merely a personal break, but a sign of system paralysis. In that isolated space, William is confronted with a grim paradox. Is the organization he has dedicated his life to protecting truly the one that orchestrated the manipulative schemes against his loved ones? The climax of this crisis lies in the decision to implement a campaign. Data audit. Most aggressively, William demanded direct access to the original files of Guardian campaign. This is the moment when the guardian of the institution decides to confront the forbidden data zones himself. Sitting alone amidst Diana's past footage and Harry's current statements, William seems to be undergoing a process. Psychological restructuring, profound. What was recorded in that sealed file became a life-changing variable, shaking all the values he had once considered fundamental. When the key to the truth is revealed to the heir, his silence is no longer a defense, but a preparation for a confrontation. Redefining heritage, an action that could permanently alter the future structure of British royal power. The tension was now undeniable. The man trained to endure in silence was beginning to face a systemic crossroads. For the first time, William, in the eyes of observers, seemed to be questioning whether the price of maintaining the regime's stability was exceeding acceptable limits. Not just for Harry, but for the entire family structure upon which this institution relies for survival. He understood perfectly what the system expected: stability, absolute loyalty, and above all, disciplined silence. However, alongside that expectation, another layer of consciousness was supposedly emerging. Not the consciousness of an heir, but of a son, a brother carrying memories that had never truly closed. From a psychological systemic analysis perspective, this was the moment when individual identity began to clash with predetermined roles. Some indirect sources suggest that William is not merely reacting, but is calculating, not with impulsive emotions, but with cautious, deliberate steps. And that's what makes the internal atmosphere more unpredictable than ever. The hypothesis is that the next decision, if any, will not stem from the title, but from memory. From the image of a mother who once tried to speak up in a system that was unaccustomed to listening. When two brothers stand on opposite sides of the same history, the entire structure around them is forced to pause and observe. In large systems, turning points rarely come with noise. They usually come from a quiet but irreversible choice. And then, according to recorded signs, the monarchy's reaction emerges. Not in the form of punishment nor exclusion, instead a move that surprises many an offer powerful enough to become the new glue or the catalyst for complete collapse. A few days after Harry's speech, which sparked widespread global interpretation, a secret message was delivered, not through the press, not through public legal channels, but through a personal envoy. The letter bore the official seal, but its tone was unusual, unceremonious, not commanding merely a proposal for a private dialogue away from the spotlight and the chaos. To some, this might be seen as a signal to de-escalate tensions. To others, it raises questions about a familiar delaying tactic. According to various theories, the family's reaction was not uniform. There is caution resistance and the memory of previous dialogues that failed to bring about substantive change. What makes this moment different from an analytical perspective is not the content of the letter, but the context. When an individual is no longer seeking approval but clarity, every invitation takes on a different meaning. Is this an opportunity for a genuine restructuring of the relationship, or merely a last-ditch effort by a system seeking to maintain control of the narrative? And if that dialogue does take place, who will truly listen, and who will confront the issues that have been delayed for so long? Speculation about the king's health began to surface as noise in a system designed to shield information. According to circulating theories, the prolonged pressures of his role, sleepless nights, and a series of urgent meetings may have led him to reflect more deeply on time and his legacy. There were whispers that he himself had carefully chosen the words in the letter, not as a command, but as a final message to be delivered, while the opportunity still remained. Under the lens of systemic analysis, this was not a sign of weakness, but rather a reflex of a structure facing its own limitations. The proposed conditions were audaciously minimalist. A private meeting between the two brothers, no staff, no press, no recording equipment, just the people and the distance that needed to be faced. After days of deliberation, the agreement was reached not out of optimism, but out of the realization that the longer the unspoken words lingered, the more fragile the system became. Those around them maintained a cautious attitude. Protectiveness and wariness went hand in hand, but everyone sensed a subtle shift like the wind changing direction before a storm. Behind closed walls, discussions began to emerge. Not about protocol, but about the possibility of restructuring for a different era, one where difficult acknowledgments, unconventional meetings, and decisions once considered impossible were put on the table. Some advisors presumably considered contingency plans, not redefining right and wrong, but repositioning roles, seeing Harry as a potential contributor to the future rather than a symbol of division. Yet this was not reconciliation. Not yet. It was a fragile balance where an ill-considered remark could shatter what had just been rebuilt. But for the rare occasion in years, the two sides entered the same space not as adversaries, but as a family trying to listen to each other. That family was fractured, yet still connected, albeit thinly. Then a final piece of information emerged, a short, anonymous statement from a senior aide. No context, no explanation, just a single line that made observers and constitutional experts pause to ponder. If Harry had returned, perhaps not in the usual way. The story thus continued to unfold, with truths to be examined, relationships to be mended, and secrets to be approached only through questioning. The content you've just watched is for reference only built from hypotheses, analytical perspectives, and unverified public opinions. It is not an official statement or conclusion. The goal of this video is to open a space for objective discussion where everyone can think and evaluate based on their own reasoning. Now it's your turn to speak. Press 1 if you are curious about the hypotheses presented. Press 0 if you remain skeptical and want to wait for clearer evidence. Don't forget to like and subscribe to continue peeling back the layers of information behind the curtain of silence, where the truth only emerges when we dare to ask questions. At 7:48 this morning, a moment marked the end of an era and the beginning of an irreversible turning point. Prince William, heir to the throne, broke the silence with a decisive move. The dynasty closed, all hope of reconciliation shattered. Why did William act so forcefully? Was it to protect his family or a declaration of the dynasty's survival? We will explore these history-changing decisions right here at Windsor. Comment 1 if you support, 0 if you find it unappealing. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the upcoming power secrets. Let's begin. Instantly, the world held its breath. For the first time in decades, major broadcasters paused their programming to air what veteran experts described as unprecedented. No more vague diplomatic rhetoric, no more appeasement delays. This message was personal and utterly decisive from William. From London to Los Angeles, from bustling newsrooms to millions of individual screens, a new reality had been established. In the United States, where royal narratives are always viewed through a deeply ingrained cultural lens, this declaration was seen as a complete redefinition of the structure of the monarchy. This was no longer a dialogue, but an affirmation of the institution's future. What surprised observers most was the absence of phrases like "at this time" or "in the present circumstances." In the dictionary of the monarchy this morning, only the concept of permanence remained. For those who had witnessed the crises of the past, William's steadfastness offered a thought-provoking clarity. Throughout the years, William had chosen to step back, allowing the institution to speak through carefully crafted statements. But today he personally signed the final chapter of a long-running controversy. This act was not merely an official announcement. It was a declaration by a future monarch of unity and the protection of the institution's core values. What prompted a man known for his meticulous planning like William to take this extraordinary step? The answer lies not in a single event, but in the accumulation of subtle shifts throughout the autumn of 2024. When diplomacy is no longer sufficient to maintain balance, And when spiritual values are put to the test beyond their limits, decisiveness becomes the only tool to protect stability. This is not an impulsive reaction, but the result of a profound process of reflection on responsibility and legacy. The door has been locked, and the key has been handed over to history. It is the culmination of a silent observation process when the limits of tolerance have finally been reached. Throughout the latter part of the year, an unusual pattern began to emerge, making Catherine unable to remain silent any longer. Whenever a significant initiative is launched or a community mission is launched, opposing streams of information immediately emerge. These articles don't come from transparent sources, but are hidden behind vague concepts like insider voices or anonymous observers. However, the timing of their release paints a picture of calculated intervention rather than random news. In a private conversation, Catherine pointed out the existence of an invisible hand pulling the strings behind these upheavals. This was no longer a natural flow of media, but a strategic campaign to obscure her devoted efforts. Witnessing his wife's devotion being undermined by deliberate manipulation, a new resolve formed within William. Meanwhile, King Charles was also facing his own challenges. He realized that the monarchy's valuable resources were being disproportionately wasted dealing with misinformation from distant sources. Legal experts and security teams had to work continuously to assess the risks from inflammatory content in the digital space. Meanwhile, the monarch himself was prioritizing his recovery, which demanded tranquility rather than relentless pressure. He felt caught between family affection and the responsibility of protecting the stability of the institution. Hope for harmony was real, but systemic paralysis was unacceptable. The real turning point came from a secret national security meeting. Authorities identified an organized pattern of activity targeting Catherine. These information campaigns transcended the boundaries of ordinary criticism to become a real threat to the credibility of the monarchy in the digital age. William received the report in a highly secure setting. Each page revealed a harsh truth about the origins of these psychological attacks. A significant proportion of the negative activities were confirmed to be linked to extremist groups from the opposition, turning William's suspicions into an alarming reality. The challenge extended beyond national borders. Delicate but serious questions began to emerge from major international partners. Strategic allies in Washington and Ottawa began expressing concern about the stability of the monarchy. They needed assurance that the symbol of the monarchy was strong enough to continue its role as a reliable diplomatic partner. This news came as a major shock to William. Understanding that the future of the monarchy rested on trust and global consistency, he knew that silence was no longer an option. His statement was not an immediate reaction, but a necessary act of self-defense to protect the institution's legacy from the storm. The upheavals involving members of the monarchy abroad were no longer mere entertainment news. They had now become a factor undermining the nation's soft power on the international stage. Princess Anne, with her practical and insightful vision, delivered a crucial wake-up call to William. She asserted that no one can protect everyone. At a certain point, a leader must choose between a constantly destabilizing individual and an institution serving millions. As winter descended upon London, William found himself caught in a maze of undeniable evidence. Psychological attacks on his family, the declining health of the monarch, and diplomatic risks threatened the nation's standing. The time for hope had ended, giving way to an era of permanent divisions. The first fundamental decision came from Princess Anne during a private meeting at Windsor. In the quiet space of knowledge and history, she did not resort to conciliatory words. She stressed that this institution required formal written and legal boundaries, not vague promises or expectations. Anne argued that without absolute clarity, all future interactions would turn into endless negotiations. Every silence would be interpreted as weakness, and every action would be dissected to search for hidden intentions. Please leave a comment with the number. If you admire Princess Anne's practical vision and determination in defending the institution, please leave a comment with the number. If you think she's too rigid and lacks the necessary empathy of a family, don't forget to press like and subscribe to the channel. Support us now, and make sure you don't miss our next decoding videos about the calculated moves of the royal family. Your interaction is what motivates us to uncover the truths hidden behind the walls of history. The only way to break the vicious cycle was to establish a new reality, a relationship with clear and public boundaries. William deeply understood that proactive clarity was the only weapon to eradicate ambiguity. The second decision stemmed from a comprehensive risk assessment by the palace legal team. The results of this investigation were truly alarming. If the ambiguity continued, the monarchy would face dangerous constitutional and security vulnerabilities. Experts warned of legal risks from unofficial statements and conflicts of commercial interest, damaging the institution's reputation. The longer the ambiguity persists, the greater the vulnerability of the institution. William understood that maintaining hope for reconciliation in a lack of transparency was essentially a far riskier gamble than a definitive split. The final, crucial element came from high-level diplomatic reports. International partners needed firm confidence that the monarchy was a symbol of stability and centralization. Prolonged internal turmoil had begun to erode the confidence of public opinion leaders and policymakers in allied nations. The issue has transcended the realm of a family conflict to become a major foreign policy concern. The government needs a decisive solution to maintain national prestige. William realizes that if he cannot manage stability within his own home, global partners will question his ability to shoulder greater responsibilities in the future. All these pressures have converged, leading to the historic declaration at 7:48 this morning. A drastic action to protect the future of the monarchy. When personal turmoil transforms into complex political problems, silence is no longer a safe haven. The final and most instinctive decision doesn't come from dry reports, but from William's heart. Throughout the final months of the year, he witnessed Catherine facing the storms of public opinion with a proud serenity. He saw his father shouldering the unresolved family rifts and saw the children growing up under the scrutinizing gaze of the outside world. At that threshold, William realized a harsh truth. The responsibility of protecting the peace of his wife and children had to take precedence over any fragile hopes of reconciliation. In a moment of quiet reflection, he admitted to Catherine that he could not repair what was broken and that continuing to try would only further hurt those he was obligated to protect. A historic declaration is never built on a blank slate. It is the convergence of four powerful forces. Princess Anne provided a sharp strategic framework. The legal team established a solid textual foundation. The Foreign Office affirmed the necessity of international standing. And finally, it was William himself who infused it with an unwavering personal resolve. As December approached, the question was no longer whether to act, but how to execute the most decisive separation. On the evening of December 1st, a small strategic council convened in his private study at Windsor. Though the fire still burned in the fireplace, the winter chill seemed to seep through the cracks in the doors, weighing down the space like a tangible entity. William arrived first, carrying a draft he had meticulously crafted over 48 hours. Every phrase had to carry the precise weight he intended for it would shape his entire reign. King Charles entered, bearing the appearance of someone burdened by immense sorrow. In his eyes, one could see the pain of a father witnessing the irreparable breakdown of blood ties. Following him was Princess Anne, who firmly believed that an institution could only survive if it protected itself from constant upheaval. Emotions, however intense, should not paralyze the actions necessary to maintain stability. Catherine's arrival changed the atmosphere in the room. Although she rarely participated in strategic meetings, William needed her presence this time. She understood perfectly well that every decision tonight would directly affect the very lifeblood of their family. William began with a straightforward and decisive manner. He asserted that this was the final decision, with no room for reconsideration, no turning back as emotions cooled. After considering all options from reconciliation to gradually establishing boundaries, he concluded that the current ambiguity was the seed of perpetual instability. As the draft was passed around and silence fell, Catherine spoke in a soft but powerful voice filled with compassion. She reminded them of the profound pain this decision would inflict on those on the other side of the border. It was the moment when royal duty and human emotion clashed most intensely, marking an irreversible turning point. William confronted the harsh reality head-on. He understood the pain of separation, but he also understood that maintaining a state of limbo would only further hurt those closest to him and weaken the foundation entrusted to him by the king. He could not continue to gamble on a distant possibility of reconciliation while neglecting his responsibility to protect the present. King Charles, in a moment of choked emotion, likened this to closing a door that should have been left slightly ajar. But William responded with the steadfastness of a true leader. That door was no longer a passageway, but a gap through which instability could enter. He closed it not with anger, but with the necessary composure for all to move forward together. Princess Anne reminded us of a harsh truth: an institution cannot be led by vague hopes of mending emotional wounds. William was putting his education into practice, prioritizing organizational stability over personal feelings, even if it meant leaving silent scars. Catherine, with her keen insight and empathy, affirmed that the language of this statement was entirely transparent. It contained no aggression. It simply established a new reality. When King Charles concluded the meeting with his trust in his son's judgment, the burden of history seemed to have been transferred. The communiqué will be released at 7:48 a.m. tomorrow, ending any lingering doubts. Precisely at 7:48 a.m. on December 2nd, the official statement was released from Kensington Palace, permanently sealing all avenues of return. In California, amidst the dim twilight, the message arrived like a silent shockwave. It was not the language of bureaucracy, but a direct verdict from an older brother. Silence enveloped the space as this reality was revealed. An insurmountable line had been drawn, a decisive judgment whose intensity no one could have foreseen. Meanwhile, in London, the monarchy's media and legal apparatus operated with absolute efficiency to handle the waves of public opinion from the very first hour. Lara Flynn. Boyle's journey is not merely a story of physical transformation, but a valuable lesson in the philosophy of limits on the path to pursuing beauty. It shows us that in the quest to reclaim youth, one can inadvertently lose the most precious part of their identity. Her story offers a profound lesson in accepting and cherishing the traces of time, for they are what give a person depth. Lara serves as a reminder that the pinnacle of beauty does not lie in flawless perfection, but in authenticity and harmony with the natural order. Once a dazzling icon of intelligence and allure in working girl Melanie Griffith entered the world of fame, carrying all the expectations of the public. Yet behind her high-profile marriages and the scrutinizing gaze of Hollywood, an invisible fear of fading began to grow. To maintain her position among other leading ladies and famous husbands, she inadvertently entered a relentless race with beauty-preserving methods. Decades of continuous interventions gradually built an artificial. This was no longer a pause or a lingering sulk. It was an end. By midday, the silence from the palace